So here, just energy community as such, because many of you around webinar are already very familiar because you're following these webinars almost a year. But for those who are new, Energy Community is established to bring energy sectors of countries which are not in EU closer to EU. And here, as you can see, Ukraine is one of our contracting parties, and what we can say, except gratitude to all people in gas TSO providing that gas transit flows to Europe, and with very warm wish that they will be soon, very soon, back to just normal topics like is Methane Monday. So last year, I already mentioned we had 7 or 8 Methane Mondays, and we were focused pretty much around the elements of regulation, which is topic of today. It was a lot about reporting framework and how to verify those data, how to detect and measure and quantify leakages and emissions, but also how to decrease those emissions and to set targets. And this was all done by experts of Mercogas and GIE, and also other institutions like Methane Guiding Principles. We also had these best practice guidelines. Nevertheless, entire year we were somehow focused, keeping eye on EU regulation to come. And really in November we had a round table on expectation of this regulation. And today we actually have representative of European Commission to explain what is in regulation, although 3 months passed, so you are all very familiar, I would say, with that. So which elements are in from these competent authorities and independent verification, and then different provisions related to oil and gas sectors and also coal sector. So how to measure emissions, how to monitor, how to report, and then provisions related to LDR, how to actually detect and repair what is in your system, and then other limitations on venting and flaring, but you will hear more about that by Mr. McDowell. And there is huge chapter also what to do with emissions which are outside of the EU, but of course they are of big reference for it, because we all have this gas and methane emissions coming with oil and gas to European Union. So today, first, Mr. McDowell from European Commission, so team leader for methane emissions in C2 unit, will put the scene, I would say, in that way, and then hopefully do some summary at the end of summary at the end of webinar. Then we will have presenters from all chain of gas industry. So for upstream there will be Mr. Gilpi from Eni. Then for midstream we have from 2 sides of the Europe. So from Enagas, Tani Meixus Fernandez, head of environmental policy and regulation. And then we have Jose de la Torre from TAP, so from, in a way, transit pipeline coming to European Union. He is head and senior manager of security, quality and environment. And then for downstream, we will have Mr. Peters from Westnets, doing with innovation and patent management. So after that, we will have a question and answer session, and I hope 90 minutes will be just enough for all. Don't be shy, put a lot of questions, because now now it's opportunity to really discuss proposal of regulation in details. And with that, I would like to ask Mr. McDowell to take the floor.
Thank you, Carolina, for inviting me to this, my first Methane Monday participation. I only missed one, apparently, occurring on a Thursday, but that's our fault, the Commission. Last 2 Mondays, we've been invited to the Council to present a proposal. We've delivered 3 presentations now to the Council of this proposal, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. It was adopted in December of last year. Its scope is very much the energy sector, parts of the energy sector, that's to say the parts of it which are not currently already regulated for methane emissions. And the context for this legislative proposal is one less a recognition, but less a realization, I should say, wider recognition that methane has extremely potent climate changing effects, as well as effects as a pollutant in a number of ways on health, on crops, on many other ways too, and the realization too that perhaps for too long there had been a focus in a number of different pieces of EU legislation on one part of the greenhouse gas emissions equation, specifically the CO2 part, but not enough on the methane part. And what we delivered is indeed correcting that in a way by presenting the first ever proposal, which we hope will become the first ever regulation on methane emissions in the energy sector in the EU. Another part of the context should be highlighted is also a call for such a proposal in the European Green Deal communication, reflected also in the Climate Target Plan impact assessment, or rather there it's more a recognition of the need for rapid action to tackle methane emissions, the risk being that if we decided to continue the status quo, there would be a very real risk that we wouldn't meet our relatively newly committed net decarbonization 2050 goals. And there's also been a wider recognition across the globe, particularly in the energy sector, but not only in the energy sector, that we have a very incomplete, to say the least, picture of what the situation is, and the suspected huge underestimation of the real methane emissions being emitted throughout the energy sector. So that explains a little bit the context. So one of the problems that we try to address with this proposal is the one of data issues, and it's extremely relevant and extremely important because the incomplete and relatively unprecise data that we have today is forming very much the basis for our commitments and all the other countries that have signed up to the Paris Agreement. And if we have, as a result of these commitments, incomplete or inaccurate data on methane emissions, then clearly that was going to be and is indeed one of the main elements, one of the main issues that we try to address in this proposal. And the way we tried to address this was by looking very much at what is currently possible to do, not only in oil and gas, but also in coal, with regards to delivering either direct measurements when that's possible, or methane emissions estimations on the basis of emission factors when it isn't, across the oil, gas, and coal supply chains. And we looked for the oil and gas sector at the OGMP standard, which has risen to be the global standard on MRV of methane emissions in the oil and gas sector, and which promises also to deliver not only direct source level methane emissions, but in due course also site level methane emissions. And this is what we decided to reflect in our proposal. However, we also decided, especially as a result of the urgency, the methane climate urgency, that it wouldn't be sufficient to come forward with a proposal which would be just focused on improving information, especially when we were aware of long-standing industry practices to mitigate methane emissions. Mitigate methane emissions without the need for first establishing a very accurate baseline of methane emissions. So alongside this requirement for accurate data and reporting, we also put together a number of proposals with regards to mitigating of methane emissions. In the oil and gas sector, one of these best practices, prescriptive measures that we put in place is an obligation on leakage detection and repair, and to have frequent surveys, and on the basis of certain parameters and thresholds to either repair immediately or to continuously monitor leaks that are found across the supply chain, with a view to reduce current and future leaks of methane emissions across the supply chain. At the same time, we assess the other ways in which, in the oil and gas sector, methane is emitted via venting or via incomplete flaring, and we decided to put in place also some measures to obligate the practices of venting without good cause. And so effectively what we're putting in place, again on the basis of best practices, on what's realistic to achieve, and on the basis of existing regulations also in other parts of the world, we proposed therefore to ban venting that couldn't be justified for any reasons, whether as a result of accidents or emergencies or exceptional reasons. And whereas we are not favoring in any way flaring as an alternative, as a long-term alternative, we are indeed rather guiding or pushing companies towards using flaring, but efficient flaring, if in the situations whereby recovery and use of the methane is not possible. What we did for the coal sector is rather similar on the MRV front. We have less the benefits of best industry practices in the sense of existing international standards, which there are a lot of, both on the MRV and mitigation front for oil and gas. But there is a wide understanding, a long historical understanding of the methane emission problem in the coal sector and of means to mitigate it. And we considered that certainly in certain specific situations, there should be no justifications for emitting of methane into the atmosphere. And so as a result, we also came forward with some obligations to mitigate methane emissions with a view to eventually eradicate venting and flaring methane emissions in the coal sector. Then, as Carolina touched upon, we also have an international aspect to our proposal. That is to say that we recognize that our consumption of fossil energy in the EU is triggering not only methane emissions as part of the production and transmission and distribution chain within the EU, but in other parts of the world that are supplying the EU. And in a rather innovative way, I should say, we've tried to do something which hasn't been done before, either in the EU or anywhere else, which is to impose some obligations on exports of fossil energy to the EU. For the moment, the obligations that I'm talking about in the context of this proposal fall on the importers of fossil energy to the EU. They cover the same scope as the general scope of this proposal. So in the context of the oil and gas and coal sectors, and they require importers to supply information on all types of relevant information with regards to measuring, reporting, and mitigation of methane emissions in those supplier countries, with a view to develop a country-by-country profile, which in due course could also become more disaggregated as we get more detailed information at the level of basins and specific production points, which will provide not only policymakers but also the public a very complete very complete set of information of the methane intensity of different countries around the world, from around the globe, and also a very complete profile with regards to what actions are being taken to mitigate those methane emissions. And this is something that we will be putting together in a methane transparency database, where we will also put all the information that we gather at the EU level from MRV obligations and LDAR obligations. And the idea with this methane transparency database is to have the first such database, which will cover the globe, not just the EU, to give all the different sorts of information that will enable us to have an informed view and to support discussions, to have informed discussions with our energy partners on their methane intensity and on the efforts that they're making to reduce that methane intensity. On top of that, because already we are getting already we have the benefit of information that we get from our own satellites, but also upcoming satellite technologies that are scheduled for the next few years that are doing environmental reporting of methane emissions. And we've decided also to create an official database which compiles the information that we're getting from this increasing satellite monitoring, which will complement the information that will be in the methane transparency database, and will also feed into it. And again, the idea behind that is not just to come up with, as some have mistakenly described it, just an information database among others, but actually will provide, together with the methane transparency database, the two most comprehensive information sources with regards to methane emissions in the energy sector. So it's quite ambitious. It's something that will take us a few years to achieve. What I can say, to continue on what I started with as regards our discussions in the European Council, and also reflecting a little bit what the European Parliament has already told us by its own initiative report, is that this proposal is widely supported both across institutions, and we've already advanced quite far in our discussions with the Council. The French presidency is very interested in this proposal, wants to make a mark with it, and wants to have some results already during the course of its own presidency, and therefore in the remaining 3 months. And it's looking very likely that the Council will have very soon a first position, at least, on this proposal. So things are moving extremely fast, which is a reflection of how the last few years methane has, in a very short period of time, become an extremely important topic of discussion and of concern. And it's also a reflection of how very quickly in our diplomatic efforts we've managed to put together two other supporting initiatives at an international level. One, the International Methane Emissions Observatory, which to this day is being fully funded by the Commission, but we're hoping that we will have wider membership and wider funding. And also the Global Methane Pledge, which more than 100 countries have committed, have signed up and committed to delivering reductions in methane emissions across all the anthropogenic methane emitting sectors in those respective countries by 2030. With that, I'll stop there. I'll be very interested to hear what the other presenters have to say on this proposal, and then also to hear any interventions from any of you who are willing to put questions to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, Malcolm, this is really very precious and very valuable to have one of masterminds of the regulation here with us. It's always different when you have explanation and elaboration from the first hand. So yes, please keep questions for the end after the presentation. And now I would like to ask Mr. Gilpi to take a floor, because we will follow this chain from upstream to downstream.
Thank you, Carolina, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm Fernando Gilpi. I work in the Climate Change Department of Eni. Okay, first of all, thanks for the invitation and for the opportunity to talk here in this event. As you probably know, we as Eni, we consider the natural gas as a fundamental energy source in the transition process. But of course, the role of transition fuels of the natural gas must also be preserved through an adequate management and minimization of methane emissions along the entire supply chain, so from production to final consumptions. So this issue is now central in the climate debate. We have seen in the last COP26 the launch of the Global Methane Pledge. So I think that there is a big consensus about the need and the opportunity to act on this topic. As an energy company, we have been committed to reducing methane emissions for many years, having been one of the first companies since 2015 to set a target for absolute reduction of fugitive emissions. And we are a lot of very much involved in international organizations supporting also the process that are related to the regulation. Let me just mention a very recent announcement made by the Oil and Gas Climate Initiatives. As known, the OGCI has set a couple of years ago a collective target to reduce methane emissions intensity well below 0.2% by 2025. But during the last CERA Week event, OGCI launched also an additional commitment, that is the aiming for near zero methane emissions initiatives. So this is an initiative where we basically are calling for an approach that to treat methane emissions as thoroughly as the oil and gas industry already manage safety. So assuming that there is the opportunity to nearly eliminate methane emissions from our operation. So by signing this framework, we will strive to reach near zero methane emissions by 2030, encouraging also our partners to do the same. But our commitment, of course, is related also to the need to put in place all the reasonable actions to avoid the methane emissions coming from venting and from flaring, to act and to repair detected leaks, to report transparently on methane emissions, and also to supporting the continuous improvement of the MRV methodologies and mechanism, and also the implementation of sound regulations to take methane emission from the oil and gas sectors. So of course, our commitment is also in terms also of encouraging governments where we operate also to include methane emissions reduction targets as part of the climate strategy. Concerning the topic of the regulation, in the 2021, we basically worked within the public and private initiative Methane Guiding Principle to develop together with other international companies in the sectors, together with some non-profit organization and academia, a set of documents of recommendations containing a short, medium, and long-term proposal sent to the European Commissions in order to develop a sound and robust policy that can adequately support the reduction of methane emissions. So we developed this set of documents that are available and publicly downloadable in the website of the Methane Guiding Principle Initiative. With regard to regulation, we followed, of course, the process of the European Commissions towards the launch of the proposals, and we now monitor, of course, the work in Parliament and in Council throughout the legislative process. In parallel, we are also contributing, providing our feedback and comments to the positioning of the trade association where we have, of course, members, like, for example, IOGP for the upstream sector and Eurogas for the midstream. Okay, so going depth into the technical content of the proposals, with this premise, of course, we support, of course, the regulation on this topic, and entering in the proposal, of course, we feel that there are some elements that are covered by the regulation that may be further improvement maybe in the future. So looking at the topic by topic, starting from the requirement requested for the monitoring, reporting, and verification mechanisms, we basically support the harmonization of these methodologies along the entire natural gas supply chain. And this is in order to guarantee the robustness and the consistency regarding the estimates of methane emissions, but of course without compromising the specific peculiarities and features of the different segment of the gas value chain, both in terms of emission sources and measurements and reporting methodologies. And on this point, we anyway believe that we could achieve and we should encourage a better alignment with the OGMP framework. We know that commissions deliberately draw inspiration from the OGMP framework, and so we think that there is room for a better alignment. So for example, terms like quantification measurements that are used in the text maybe could be better aligned with the definition of the OGMP 2.0. Also, the requirements related to independent reporting and verification obligation can be better aligned, and moreover, the proposal should also include some materiality provisions. This is regarding the MRV article. So regarding the leak detection and repairs requirement, the current proposal is really prescriptive. It is clearly defined a frequency, a detection device, a timeline for repairing, and so on. A good way for improvement for improving the proposal is, for example, to move from a prescriptive approach to a framework that is more oriented towards a risk-based approach, also leveraging on the great experience that the oil and gas companies have achieved in the last decade in the implementation of leak detection and repairs practices. A risk-based approach is a preferable way in order to prioritize actions and also maximize the benefit in terms of environmental protection. it is a good, of course, setting a minimum frequency can help, of course, and that can also promote also the industry consistency, of course, but a strict fixed frequency maybe could be not always appropriate in case where basically no emissions have been identified in multiple surveys. So we believe that this is a point where there could be some room of improvement, as well as we believe also that it is appropriate to ensure the opportunity to use different measurement methodologies and technologies that are, of course, recognized and validated for this task, according with the peculiarity of specific assets and segments of the value chain. Regarding venting, the requirement for mitigating emissions from venting and flaring, in this case, we would suggest to refer to, in terms of venting and flaring terms, to refer to the definition that are widely used in the sector, like, for example, the ones provided by the World Bank Global Gas Flaring Reduction Partnerships. The proposed standard is really, of course, this is challenging for low volume onshore facilities, and so also in this case it will be necessary to address the issue of materiality, also in line with what is provided for example, in the OGMP framework. So this is a point where maybe that there could be some additional details that can help also for the implementation. Moreover, what is necessary to do is also to take into account the some current technological gaps regarding the methodologies for detecting, for example, the combustion efficiency on the flares, as well as for implementing weekly inspections with the criteria that are set in the proposal. Anyway, there is no doubt that all potential methane emissions coming from venting and flaring need to be addressed. Of course, continuing to act and operate in a safety condition. Regarding the abandoned wells, also in this case, there is a need to, in our view, to address the issue of materiality, to better understand what are the detailed criteria to set, to define where and how we need to implement some monitoring. For example, the duration of the inactivity of the wells, the duration of and the methodology for the measurements to implement. Currently, there is a broad definition of inactive wells, and this could lead to MRV requirements that could potentially cover thousands of abandoned offshore wells and offshore wells. So there is, of course, a significant risk of incurring in very high costs for the industry. And so in this case, what is for sure a point to better address is to work on criteria for the materiality. A last point is related to the obligation, to the reporting obligation for gas importers. In this case, we feel that it is necessary, of course, that the regulatory framework can take into account the level of information that are currently made available by the counterparties under the current supply agreement. So it is clear that the need of transparency and for potential all the future agreements, but currently the current supply agreement may not cover also the requirement for the exporter to provide this information. And so it is necessary to avoid exposing importers to the risk of penalties in case the importers cannot have access and can demonstrate it about some kind of information. Of course, making all the reasonable effort to achieve these informations. So basically, these are the main point of discussion in our view. We will answer to the consultation. We will provide the feedback. We are already doing it through the association. But of course, given that there are some points of improvement, we are of course open to discuss, and we will be part of the discussion in this debate, of course. Thank you. This is I finished, Carolina, so I give the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. It was very clearly and very structured. So I hope that also Malcolm put it down. I was putting your points down, as I will do for all presenters. Now we will continue with midstream, so with TSO, with Enagas. So please, Tanya, take the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We see your screen, still not in presentation mode. Now it's done.
Okay, perfect.
All fine.
Perfect. So thank you very much for inviting me to be here. So I'm Tania and I work for Enagas. So Enagas is the main gas infrastructure operator in Spain. So we are operating LNG regasification terminals, underground gas storages, compressor stations, and the transmission grid. So I will start my presentation with a short overview of the commitments of Enagas, and then I will go through the main points from our views on the proposal for the regulation. So Enagas has committed to be carbon neutral by 2040. So we have also implemented or established some intermediate targets. So to achieve this target, so we have defined an energy efficiency and emissions reduction plan. So this plan includes more than 50 projects that will be carried out in the next years. And so as part of our decarbonization strategy, so we have established also individual targets for reduction of methane emissions. So our targets are aligned with the Global Methane Alliance of United Nations. So we have committed to reduce our methane emissions by 45% in 2025 with respect to 2015, and at least 60% in 2030 with respect to 2015. And in the meantime, so we have reduced our methane footprint by 36%. So in 2020, we joined on voluntary basis the initiative OGMP. So last year we were awarded with the gold standard. So and now on the content of the regulation, so I will start with our views on the monitoring, reporting, and verification. So it's clear that you can neither manage nor improve what you don't identify. So an important number of European operators have joined the OGMP 2.0 initiative. And so we have been working with United Nations Environment, with Environmental Defense Fund, and with the European Commission in the development of the reporting template, the set of technical guidance documents, and the uncertainty and reconciliation guides. And so most of these documents are already available on the OGMP website, and some of them will also be available in the next days. So to be awarded with the gold standard, so companies need to be reporting at least in the level 4. So level 4 means bottom-up quantification based on measurements, engineering calculations, simulation tools, and emission factors, but considering concepts such as materiality and representative sampling. And so we have seen that the proposal for the regulation builds on the OGMP 2.0 initiative. However, is not considering important concepts such as materiality and representative sampling, and also sometimes is also trying to interpret what is written in the reporting framework. So therefore, to avoid differences between the European regulation and what we will be doing in the OGMP 2.0. So our proposal is to align the regulation with the OGMP 2.0 and giving references to the reporting framework, the reporting template, and to the technical guidance documents. And in the meantime, also to start working under the umbrella of SEN in European standards, so covering all these documents. So also the regulation is referring to normally to measurements. However, so it should refer to quantification also to ensure that engineering calculations, simulation tools, and emission factors are allowed. So one of our biggest concerns is the references to level 5 and to the site level measurements. So the article on the MRV so includes some obligations on how to proceed with this site level measurements. So also to get the gold standard in OGMP, so we need to show efforts with this kind of technologies to be in the level 5. But so what we have seen in the last years is that neither technologies, at least not the mid and downstream segments, so are ready to comply with the current test of the proposal for the regulation. So last year we launched a R&D project under the umbrella of the European Gas Research Group. So we started with the study of the state of the art of the site level technologies. And so based on that, so we've seen that most of the available technologies show good detection capabilities, but important limitations to accurately quantified methane emissions. So therefore, we decided to launch a next phase of this project. So we launched a technology benchmark of these site technologies. So with controlled releases of methane emissions, so we were doing some tests with 13 different technologies. And so we are at the moment, so the group of scientists that carry out the analysis of the data, so they are at the moment finalizing the report, and there will be also a scientific publication based on all the findings and also the results of this project. And we are at the moment defining, so we have already launched the next phase of this project. So there will be measurements in a compressor station that will be in operations, and there will be a source level and so bottom-up measurements in parallel with site level or top-down measurements. And we will also work on the comparison and the reconciliation of both. So in the article on MRV, so there is a subparagraph establishing that in the case of discrepancies between the top-down and the bottom-up, so additional measurements shall be carried out. So however, so reconciliation doesn't mean matching. So it's true that with the top-down or site-level technologies, so you may obtain additional information. So you learn things on your methane emissions, but it doesn't mean that you are going to get the same number that you have with your bottom-up quantification. So here I have included some pictures. So this is one of our LNG regasification terminals. So you see that it's a big site with a huge process area, high tanks, so emissions that can be, or sources of emissions that can be found at different heights. And also there are thousands of components that may leak. And so in this kind of technology, so this top-down or site-level technology, so may give you additional information. However, there are thousands of small installations along our transmission grid in Europe, which are these regulating and metering stations or valve nodes, where there are just pipes and some connectors or some valves. When with the handheld device you can go easily to the asset, so to try to identify it or to detect so all your methane emissions very easily with this kind of technologies. And you don't need a drone or on an airborne to fly over the installation, or a car driving around of your small asset. So therefore the main message here is that effort should be proportional, which means that at the end that so you don't need to measure with this kind of technologies in all your assets. So a representative, you can measure in a representative sample, and the lessons learned in this sample can be extrapolated to your other assets. So for example, so you could have 25 compressor stations, so you don't need to go and measure all of them, but the lessons learned in one of them can be extrapolated. And also materiality should be also taken into account. So these small assets represent a very small part of our total methane emissions, but when you sum up all the thousands of these small assets, so they became material. However, it doesn't make any sense when you can do it easily with a handheld device. So therefore, so we would like to include a kind of threshold in the regulation to avoid that there are obligations with this kind of technologies in the small installations. And also, so we see the need to launch a standardization process under the umbrella of CEN to try to standardize so the site level measurements, so the uncertainty and reconciliation, and so in general the quantification. So also on the MRV part, so double reporting should be avoided. So at the moment we are on one hand reporting to OGMP 2.0, and on the other hand we are also giving our reporting to other initiatives, as for example we are reporting for the national inventory reports. So therefore, so the reporting template that we are using for OGMP 2.0 should we use the same one that we are using for the national inventory report, or at least to try to align both as much as possible? So in the case of the non-operated assets located in Europe, so at the end there is always an operator doing the operation of the asset. So therefore, so our proposal is that the operator is the one reporting the emissions and not the owners. And on the reporting obligations on LDART and venting and flaring, so our proposal is to do this reporting on annual basis in line with the emissions reporting, so to avoid a huge administrative burden and cost to both the operators and the competent authorities. On the verification and inspections, so our proposal is that they should be aligned with current obligations and practices. So at the moment we are certified with the ISO 51 or the ISO 41 or the ISO 1464. So therefore, also to avoid a more administrative burden and cost, so we propose to try to align them as much as possible to cover them with the new obligations. On the mitigation of methane emissions. So also materiality and proportionality should be considered in this part. So just to ensure that we are implementing those mitigation measures that contribute to a highest reduction of GHG emissions in the shortest time and in the lowest cost. So we propose to have a kind of methane emissions mitigation plan, so covering. So we are having discussions at European level on whether they should include a number of years or not. So if so, just to try to prioritize so those emissions, those mitigation measures that reduce more emissions in the shorter time. And so these mitigation plans should be approved by the competent authorities. So on the venting and flaring, so we fully agree that the priority should be reinjection or utilization instead of venting and flaring the gas. However, so to implement the mitigation measures to avoid venting and flaring, so this will take time. And so most of us are regulated companies, and so to ensure that we are recovering these investments and this cost, so we need to present so the different initiatives to the regulator, and is the regulator the one that, or the competent authority, the one that needs to approve these investments. So therefore we see that also this part should be part of the methane emissions mitigation plan. On the LDAR, so I fully agree with Leonardo that the LDAR provisions are very prescriptive. So there is included the threshold on the 500 ppm, which is aligned with the method 21 of the EPA. That will imply limitations for other technologies that are currently used. And so here I have added some examples on these technologies. So also on the frequency, so the 3 months will be very costly and not very efficient. So our proposal is that the elder campaign should be annual, and this to be discussed with or to be agreed with the competent authorities. So based on the results and the learning of the different operators. So on the 5 days repairs, so this is not very realistic. So for example, you have been the LNG regasification terminal, which at the end is a huge installation. So some of the repairs can be done in parallel during the elder campaigns. However, there are some cases where you need to shut down the installation, or you need an administrative authorization, or there may be impacts on the security of supply, or disproportionate environmental impacts, or you may don't have the equipment or the component that you need to replace. So therefore, to do it in 5 days is not really realistic. And so just to avoid that the regulation is very prescriptive, so we think that a SEN standardization process, or a standardization process under the umbrella of SEN, so should be launched, covering the LDAR requirements. And so some final thoughts from my side. So it should be recognized that one type of solution doesn't fit all cases. So the assets that you can find along the gas value chain are different, and so therefore having appropriate SEN standards covering LDAR quantification and reporting could avoid having a very prescriptive regulation. Also, regulation should be technology agnostic, so technologies, methodologies, and practices are evolving very quickly. So therefore, we should ensure the room for this to be used and implemented in the next years. So also flexibility is needed to ensure that the most effective actions are prioritized, and this is the base for the proposal on the methane emissions mitigation plans with an analysis of the different mitigation measures. Materiality and representative sample should be considered in the regulation to ensure proportional efforts. So to ensure that the efforts are put where more emissions are. On the top downside level technologies, more research and development is needed. So we have launched projects on voluntary basis, but more are needed. So the main quantification actions should be focused on the bigger sites and those that are really material with higher emissions. And then Enagás is a regulated company, so one of the last messages has to be that the investment and costs should be recognized by national regulatory authorities. And so my last point is that at the end of this is on reduction of methane emissions. So the main effort should be on the mitigation and not on having very accurate numbers. And so thank you very much. If you have any questions, so happy to take it.
Thank you very much, Tanya. It was also well structured and well put in place and in slides. So we will immediately go to another part of Europe, so to East, and from operator who operates as Enagás, LNG and transmission and storages. Now we have one transit pipeline crossing through different regulatory frameworks and bringing gas to Europe. So Jose, please, floor is yours. And slides are already here, I've seen, just to put it in.
Thank you, Carolina. Good afternoon, all. First of all, thank you again for inviting TAP to present in this very interesting discussion about the Methane Mondays being today Thursday, but exceptional cases. So as you mentioned, TAP is for those who are attending today who doesn't know where is TAP. No, we are part of the. You are controlling the slide presentation, no? Myself, Rolina?
Yes. Slides are here. It's not run by me, then by my colleague Inga,
Okay.
and she is in the office. So just say next slides and she.
Great. So you can move. Thank you. So for those who doesn't know about TAP, TAP is the European leg of the Southern Gas Corridor. You know, the Southern Gas Corridor is a mega project, you know, bringing gas from the Caspian Sea that improves the security and diversity of energy supply, connecting the European markets with this zone in Azerbaijan. So the capacity of our pipeline is 10 BCM. This is the initial capacity, but could be duplicated capacity as the design was thought with this sense, with some investments, some changes in the compressor station units, but the pipeline is designed for duplicated capacity. And 10 BCM correspond approximately to provide the supply energy to 7 million households in southern, eastern, and western Europe. The length of the pipe is 878 kilometers, distributed in 3 countries, 550 kilometers in Greece, 215 kilometers in Albania. Then we have a part of offshore, 105 kilometers in the Adriatic Sea, and entering in the south of Italy in Melendugno, covering 8 kilometers, and then connecting now with Snam Gas in Italy. In this infrastructure, in this 878 kilometers, we have 2 compressor stations. One of them is in the border with Turkey, in Kipi, in Greece, and the other one is in Albania, in Fier, just immediately before the entering in the offshore part. We have also in Italy a pipeline receiving terminal. After that is connecting, as I said, now with Snam Gas. Next slide, please. So we started our operation in December 2021, so we've been 1 year and a few months operating. So we are a very new TSO in Europe. Of course, this is one of the things that being a new TSO over facilities, over infrastructure, over project is considering the best available techniques. So at the end, as Tani has said before, today the intention to you to present is what are our results after 1 year operation. And I think is one example about the one type of solution doesn't fit of cases in the gas industry. So since the beginning, also TAP take very seriously the reduction of emissions and sustainability concepts. So we implemented voluntary mechanisms for identification and quantification of greenhouse gas emissions, including also methane emission. And also, after a few months of starting operation, the company defined an energy transition task force with the intention to prepare the energy transition strategy as well as a carbon management plan. The energy transition strategy, let's say, is a broader document to define a short, mid, and long-term vision. What are the main drivers, the strategic objectives, and also main actions to achieve our carbon neutrality in 2050. And these main initiatives, main drivers are landed into carbon management plan. The first one is done in 2022-2025. The document is now nearly completed, it's drafted now. And this document contains, first of all, what are our source of emission, what is our forecast, but also emission target for greenhouse gas, CO2, but also for methane emissions, and the different initiatives expected to be implemented per year to achieve these targets in 2025. So for this, there are different working groups created. One of them is the carbon footprint and sustainability work stream that has also 2 integrated working groups, one of the greenhouse gas emission and energy efficiency. So let's say in this working group, the different initiatives related in the carbon action plan are coming from this group and then presented to the energy transition steering committee for the approval. And also TAP decided to join the OGMP 2.0. So in principle, our plan is this year to achieve level 2 and 3, next year level 3, 4, 2024 now level 4 gold standard, and 2025 level 4 and 5. So that's our plan related to that. So in the next slide, what I want to show you now is the real outcome or results about what we achieved in 2021. So after 1 year operation, so you can see in this slide that 98%, more than 98% of our emissions are coming from direct emission, scope 1. Only 1.7 represents electricity consumption is scope 2. Another relevant thing is that 94.6% of TAP greenhouse emission comes from CO2. So our contribution for methane emission is only 5.4%. This is divided between natural gas venting and fuel emissions. I will go later on in a little bit more detail, but it's relevant that probably when we compare with other TSO, other companies, probably the figure of methane emission is much higher, but for a new greenfield as TAP, it only represents 5.4%. And also this CO2 emission coming mainly for the consumption or the combustion of natural gas, minor quantity coming from diesel in emergency system, the power generation or firefighting equipment. The other relevant thing also is that 99% also of our emission coming basically from the compressor station, the PRT. So only 1.2 is transmission network, methane station, block valve. Vehicle fleet is only 0.03% of our total emission. And finally, the electricity consumption is only 0.10 of total emission. In terms of, not only in terms of facility distribution, but also in terms of emission by source. Next slide, please. Next, yeah, thank you. So this is relevant that for TAP, we are in the interconnector at the end, as the last leg of the Southern Gas Corridor. 90%, more than 90% of our emissions are generated by the self-consumption of natural gas in turbo compressors. So this is our main source of emissions. So our carbon management plan, for example, one of the main initiatives for this year is focused on how to minimize emissions coming from gas turbines, and thinking now in some studies for electrification, for using biogas, biomethane, or hydrogen. So this is, let's say, focus the effort on that, no matter that there is any other initiative related to the other topics. As you can see, emission from boilers and gas generator is only 2.5%. And then coming back to the methane emissions, as I said in the previous slide, methane emission is only 5.1%, but also when we divide it between vented and fuel emission, vented represents 3.6%, and fuel emission, considering is taken for the real data, because we completed now our first leak detection campaign, is 1.8% of total TAP emission. So even this year, we expect a reduction when we implement the different leaks identified there. So this number even will be lower. No? The rest of emission, energy production, firefighting, vehicle fleet, electricity consumption, which is only 0.12%. So next slide. As I mentioned before, TAP, even in the first year of operation, we also, as I said at the beginning, we were very committed with our reduction of emissions. So we performed a leak detection campaign. So this leak detection and quantification campaign was carried out in our main facilities, in the two compressor stations, the PRT, but also we selected 2 block valves per country in order to have a representation for each of them, and then we extrapolate that. The scope of the campaign was the identification and quantification of fuel emissions. So considering all structure and components that could be susceptible to generate fuel emission. So they were all of them reviewed. And this revision consisted of hybrid fuel emission detection sampling using an infrared camera and then subsequent concentration measurement with a quantification equipment. The methodology is the normal one followed with methodology EPA 21 and the EN 15446. Also, we did a division between the different possible components to emit fluid emissions. So we had bulbs. In this case, for the bulbs, in bulb housing consist of multiple parts. It was measuring also in all points that could leak. And also when these bulbs were installed with flange, in this case, the flange were considered as a separate component, considered under the classification of other, as we will see later. The other component was connectors. So in this category includes also all types of threaded joints, fittings, plugs. In other, it will include this flange and blind flange. Then we had the PCA, pressure safety valve and safety valve. So, and finally, the open end, where we included vents, exhaust, flow meter, condenser purge, etc. So the result of this first campaign, next slide, please. So when we performed the leaks in the 3 countries, it was performed by a specialized company, Enagas Vira. They identify, let's say, 3 categories of leaks. According to the level of leaks, 3 colors were used. The green color was for points in which the concentration was higher than 500 ppm or not exceeding the 10,000, yellow between 10,000 and 50,000, and red more than 15,000 ppm. In parallel, for each and every one of the detected leaks, they were recorded in a field sheet, and then processing with a computer program, we obtain also the methane emission rate in each of them. As I said before, the block valve, we didn't measure in all the block valves. What we did was an extrapolation considering the worst case scenario in each of them, because in some cases we have no leaks in the valve, and the other one we have. So we use the worst case scenario and multiply for all the block valves we had per country. So the final result of this, next slide please, summarize that, is that in terms of zoning, the zones with the higher number of points were identified in the turbo compressor units. In terms of priority of the total emission, initially identified and also after parallel repair, 114 were considered a high priority, 30 as medium, and 46 as low priority. In terms of the component, the component with the highest number of emission points was the open end, with approximately 60% of emission rate. Positive thing also, this is also because we are a green field, but only 5 flames have presented fluid emission of the total number of flames verified. And after the completion of the campaign, an action plan now is ongoing. Some of the initiatives were implemented directly last year, end of the last year. All of them are still ongoing to mitigate the leaks identified. The plan for this year is define the target testing, prepare also a methane emission reduction plan. The carbon management plan contains targets for, as I said before, for CO2, but also for methane emissions. So based on the initiatives, including the methane emission reduction plan, based also on the action plan for remove or repair the leaks identified, we are also defining a target for methane emission. And also the yearly calculation using the OGMP reporting questionnaire and guidelines. In Italy, we are performing annually this leak detection campaign. It's a requirement we have in Italy from our verification of compliance. In the rest of the countries, we are planning to perform another campaign next year. Once we implement all these measures, once we implement some of the initiatives identified in the methane emission reduction plan. So with this analysis after 1 year, after a new TSO, some reflection about this new proposal is that, as our colleague says, we are fully in favor to use a risk-based approach. The frequency is something that should be considered according to the facility, according also to the technology already installed, according to, in our case, as I said before, the margin we could have a new company like that with the best technology already implemented. Probably is different, totally different, another company which is 40 years old. No? Considering also the associated cost that this campaign has. So we consider that the prioritized actions is needed, and consider that the resources, the time, the effort, the money to be really focused on those areas that represent more concerning on that. No? So in summary, another thing also important is that no matter that in our case, we are crossing 3 countries, we apply the same approach in all of them, no matter if they are EU countries or not. So in Albania, the same methodology that we are using in Greece and Italy is applied already in Albania. So even we calculate the emission factor as our compressor stations were under ETS, so that we don't have differences between one another about the approach to use. In other case, to conclude, I think this is one example after, as I said, a new TSO, a new company, greenfield, that one type of solution doesn't fit all cases for gas industry. So thank you very much. I finish now my presentation, Carolina.
Thank you very much, Jose. It was also good to see this approach from brand new TSO, how to deal with it. And now, last but not least, Mr. Peters from Westnets, and great thank to him because he jumped really in the very short notice when we were changing those dates. So Westnets is a combined system operator, but you will hear more from Klaus. So please take the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here to can speak and tell about something about our business. I am a member in our innovation department and patent management, and we see here it's a part of a business to do innovations. So my screen will show you some information, methane emissions from DSOs. I will show you some measures in the distribution network and results of the DVGW and project VDSO or DYGW. I don't know exactly. In German, we call DVGW is our association, and in this club, in this association, are more than 700 DSOs in Germany. That's our structure. Okay, then let me go forward. I try it with a click. First, I will give some information about the avoidance of methane emissions during operation, researches for emission reduction, and research result meet proposal of regulation. I hope it will be interesting for you the next 10 minutes. Now I will show you our business to come a little bit closer to that. We are in the urban area. We distribute gas. We take it from the transport system operator. That's not really you for you. And we have a lot of lines, more than 24,000 kilometers gas lines, mostly or usually up to 16 bars. And on the right side, you see inside this small house, and we operate 2,700 PRMs, and this is a bigger one, and we measure it. And I will show the surprisingly measurement results later. Okay. Headline is maybe very important too, I think. Methane emissions of DSOs in Germany contribute 0.24% to the total greenhouse gas of Germany. And before we read the proposal, we thought that isn't a relevant component. Now, maybe we will try to change our mindset in this case. Okay. We have only 0.24% of the total emissions. It is a sum of tiny little emissions. And a lot of tiny little emissions, not in the amount of emission itself, but a lot of small leakages, small meter changes. And we have sometimes a meter change is not more than a cup of tea at emission. Okay, and in this case, in our business, we have an implemented LDAR system is applied, MRV is applied, and avoidance of venting and flaring is applied. And MRV, you see the national inventory report and the national report in Germany, and I will show you some results on that and the effect of the new regulation. Okay, but now researches for emissions reduction. Most comprehensive DVGW emission measurement program in Germany. 28 DSOs participate, and we measured all over Germany with a source level measurement, the only one we know. And we have the same did we in the pressure regulation measurement station all over Germany too. And we have 126 emission readings and 100 on lines and line leaks and 159 emission readings on pressure regulation stations. And the surprise is our average of all 30 liters per hour per leak. Before we calculated this 140 liters per hour per leak, that is round about 5 times smaller. And the most surprisingly result is in the PRMS systems, we have round about 2 liters per hour per station as an average. And before we saw 105 liters, and in high pressure stations, and 26 liters in medium pressure stations. And yes, we are really surprised because it's much more less. And now we see with this results the main emitters, the relevant components. In this research, we see the lines are the main, the fugitive are one of the part of the main emissions and relevant components. Good, the results will be published in a few days. We are very close to the end. And let me tell some information about the source level. The source level we used needs 1 day for one accurate pipeline leak measurement. It's not a best guess with other measurement systems. It's a source level direct measurement. And you see the principle here, you see the leak and it's the blowout. And with the leak detection system, we detect this unimpeded leakage gas flow. And then we come with our measurement systems and set some probes up to 9 around the leak, and we pump the air or the air out of the soil in this measurement system. And this we do it a long time because we measure the unimpeded leakage gas flow parallel, and when that is very close to 0, then we are sure that the fully emission is in our measurement system. So we have a lot of trust in our new measurement results. That is this point. Forgot something? Yes, we did it in this with the same principle in the GPMR, in the pressure regulation stations too. Okay, next point. We see 0.24%. It's our kind of living, our mindset, and our business follow this priority we have from this. And it is the sum of tiny little emissions. New LDAR regulation will challenge DSOs really related to our 2,700 PRMS above ground with a fence around mostly. It's easier, but we see we are working on a reduction of just 1.8 liter per hour per station. We will reduce that. We do that immediately, or we speak about just less than 10% of our Westnetz methane emissions, and we will discuss is a pressure regulation measurement system, is it a relevant component, with a big question mark. And then related to our 24,000 kilometer network, it's underground without a fence. No one sees it. It's very nice normally, and it is less in maintenance. 4 detections per year will overwhelm the measurement service provider market massively. We are very familiar in Germany with frequencies once a year, every 2 years, and sometimes every 3 years, and very seldom in a longer period. And that depends on the condition of our assets. In winter, additional, we don't do measurements because the results are not accurate enough. And we checked satellite measurements and mobile measurement systems for pipeline leaks, and they are not accuracy enough yet in this moment. And so,
Mr. Peters, my apologies, and it's always not nice to be the last presenter, but I would really like to ask you to speed up a bit, because then we will have
the last
few minutes for questions. Thank you, and my apologies.
Is it the end now for me? Okay.
No, it's not so strict, and maybe just to let you that you put 2 more messages, because one is related to Eldar, and I saw from your slides that you have also 2 other messages for venting and flaring, and also for monitoring, reporting, and verification. But please, in 1 minute, and
1 minute. Okay, you see on the pictures, it's very important. The distance is very close to from the probe to the surface. That is very important. It has to be very small, and our mobile system has this small distance too. That is very important to find all leaks. It's our accuracy. Thank you very much. And then I will say something about venting and flaring. In Germany, we have 29 measures in use, and we reduce the pressure, we reduce the pipeline section, and with a regulation now, we have really a big problem to continue our business. And MRV is really a need. We have to do better. Related to our research results, we will do more in measurements, transparency, and best practice benchmark, and we provide all tasks in this case. And my question is, what can we conclude from the reports? We reduce our emissions. That is our strategy. And what can NGOs or authority do with a result close to 0? That's my question to you. And so I'm finished now. And we have an innovation program. You can read that in this innovation report. And now you have my contact and some information before, and maybe we can come to the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and sorry for interrupting you, but yeah, we are almost at the end, and it always take more time than we foreseen. But so far I saw only one question in chat, so I can read it, but also Mr. Chermak maybe can unmute himself and ask the question.
Yep, thank you. My question is for Malcolm, and I apologize in the chat for misspelling your name. That was not intentional. My question goes to I would like to see from your perspective, how did you approach building the proposal? How did you actually evaluate if, or what you write, what effect it has on reducing emissions? And if for us, you know, on the other side of the fence, if there are some publicly available resources where this is described, and whether we can, if we wish to help you out or to contribute with our results, to find maybe a middle ground in what we think, what can be achieved, and what you think, what you model that can be achieved.
Thanks, Martin, and don't worry about misspelling my name. I was introduced as Mr. McDonald, and I took no offense. It happens all the time. I wouldn't worry about it. But no, it's a very relevant question, and one that allows me to respond that these days the Commission cannot deliver any proposals on new legislation without submitting an accompanying impact assessment. That's what we did, and the whole point of the impact assessment is indeed to put our proposals to the test and try as much as possible to assess what impacts they will lead to, how much they will cost, and what the benefits will be. So you'll be able to see more details on that impact assessment, which accompanied our policy proposal, certainly in the DGNR website, if not in other parts where of the European Commission websites where our proposal is also located. If you have trouble finding it, you can always send me an email. I'll happily email it to you, and be more than interested in seeing whatever modeling you have for us. I could take the opportunity of just giving some feedback on all the things that I've heard today. Is that what you'd like me to do next, Carolina, knowing that we're already 2 minutes over time?
Yes, thank you very much. And my apologies for all misspelling.
No, don't worry about it. As I said, I'm used to it. Yeah, no, well, a lot of the things we heard today are things we have heard at times as part of the process. We consulted stakeholders. There was an open public consultation. We got a lot of the elements actually of our proposal came from the responses to this open public consultation questionnaire, and we did something that I think is not even necessarily always done by the Commission, which is that we already announced in the questionnaire what sort of approach we thought we would be taking, and we were effectively putting it up for discussion, and we got a lot of feedback. So it demonstrated that we're quite keen to try to come up with a proposal that was the result of this consultation, and I think we did something that was quite close to it. Looking at specific points, whether we reflected OGMP well or not, I see that some of you are asking for us to be closely adhering to what OGMP has put forward on one hand. On the other hand, when it's less suitable, such as level 5, perhaps not so close to OGMP. What we did with regards to OGMP is we tried to be quite loyal to it because we think OGMP is a good standard. But the OGMP framework isn't always very precise with regards to definitions. And whereas in a voluntary standard open to interpretation by companies, you can afford to be less prescriptive and be less specific in terms of definitions. In a legislative proposal, you have to be a lot more specific, which means that sometimes we had to interpret things when things weren't too clear in the OGMP framework. But I think we're open to hearing if you thought specifically that we got certain things wrong, although I would ask you to justify, and for everything that you sent to us, we were very open to hearing your grievances, but I think you need to be justifying what you're telling us. If I'm hearing from TAP that they're already committed to delivering level 5 measurements by 2025, it would be interesting to know why the rest of the industry have signed up to OGMP, if there are any think it's not possible to deliver that. I think in any case that you know, in terms of the wording that we use with regards to how level 5 will be used, we to check level 4 results, we remain fairly open, and it's not very precise or specific. We talk about large discrepancies, for instance. We ask for remeasurements in the case of large discrepancies, not in the case of small ones. So it's not very committal, I think. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some other stakeholders come back to us and say, well, we'd like to make this more committal, because we don't think that this is very constraining on the industry. You're just talking about large discrepancies, very open to interpretation. So yes, that's the point on OGMP. On the point on a risk-based approach, we've heard it a lot also in the context of responses from member states highlighting the risk-based approach. I'd just like to know whether there is a common understanding from industry on what a risk-based approach should be. If it's about doing a lot of tests initially over a certain initial period and then less tests on the basis of what industry considers to be risky and less risky situations. I'd love to know more, for example, about the you know, the LDAR campaigns that are being carried out. We had a nice introduction to what TAP is doing again there. I'd love to know more, for example, how do you decide on the priorities of leaks to repair, and what exactly do you take into account in your risk assessments? You look at the impact assessment that I highlighted, and you know, one of the reasons for action is to explain that there's still a lot of methane being emitted in the atmosphere by the energy sector, because their risk-based assessment is not capturing enough of the methane emissions that we consider from a society point of view should be captured and mitigated. So if we leave it to you guys, to the industry, to have your own risk-based assessment, there's a chance that we're going to end up with a status quo. The status quo is not enough mitigation. So we need to be quite prescriptive, otherwise we won't have the harmonization that some of you are even asking us to have. And it's not just the fact that, you know, methane is 80 times more powerful than CO2 on a long-term basis. It's also that it costs a lot to society. UNEP last year measured 3,600 euros cost to society per ton of methane. That's a very high cost, and we need to take that into account. We did in our impact assessment. You'll see that. I'm open to comments also about frequencies and timelines being very ambitious. Again, though, please do send some justifications. 5 days is perhaps too ambitious, but 10-year mitigation plans is perhaps a little bit too unambitious. I'm joking. I'm not saying that you're proposing to replace 5 days with 10 years, but I'd like to hear more about this 10-year mitigation plan, how that fits into what we've proposed. I'm not sure. It's not clear to me. I'd like to hear more about the how 500 ppm implies limitations for certain technologies as well. Of course, we wouldn't want that to be the case. You've spoken about standards, the need for standards in LDAR, in the context of LDAR, in verification and inspections. We're working on that. Definitely, standards are important. Existing standards, if they're already relevant, should be applied. We agree on that. It was too difficult for us to name all the right standards in time for this proposal, but in the second part of the process now, I think it's an opportunity to bring in the relevant standards into the proposal. If the council and the parliament are willing to do that, I think there's sense in it, and we should also be considering developing specific guidelines. And for that, definitely, I think OGMP is a useful source of information. The technical guidelines or the reporting templates being developed by OGMP will potentially, I think, be very useful to certainly take into account in the modifications to the proposal. They will be very useful, definitely. What else should I be saying? I'd love to hear more about the experiences of WestNet as well. Thank you very much for that presentation. I think it was very useful to hear what you're doing, what you're currently doing, and I'm looking forward to having the results of this emission measurement program across these 28 DSOs. You said they would be available in the coming days. It would be very useful to know more about that. So perhaps don't hesitate to come back to us and invite the Commission on a presentation of these results. We'd be very interested to hear. And we'd also be very interested to hear of the, about the challenges of managing a methane mitigation plan across a 24,000 kilometer pipeline network. None of us at the Commission would argue against the view being expressed today that it's a difficult task, that's for sure. So we'd love to hear more about the difficulties on the ground and what that means for our proposal and how perhaps it should better reflect those difficulties. So please, we're very much open to it. I won't say much more. I've not covered all your concerns or issues, no doubt, but my colleagues and both my colleagues, by the way, Joanna Simao and Dinko Raichev, were on the call today listening very attentively to your concerns, and we've taken notes. Please don't hesitate to send us through more details in emails and justifications for your concerns, as we did in response to the open public consultation. We will look through the details of it. And also, I'm being asked to reiterate that there is not only a pre-adoption consultation, but there's a post-adoption consultation which is running until the 18th of April on this proposal. So you still get an opportunity also to formally deliver your concerns and views on the proposal. You can do that as well as send us emails that we will happily read and look into. So with that, I'll just close on my part from the Commission side. Thank you very much for your contributions, very interesting presentations, and look forward to further input and further discussions to try to refine this proposal to something which I'm hoping will be an ambitious and useful regulation to have in place in the EU in the next few years. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. It was worth to move Monday to Thursday for you to have you with us at this webinar. And thank to Tanya, actually, because she was the one insisting that this topic should be still in March, in time for this public consultation. And I think that actually it was really very useful. I am sorry that there was no space anymore for other questions, but I think channels are open, so for all remarks and still opinions. And thank to all presenters being with us all the time. So as we said, we are going to publish presentations. We recorded the entire webinar, so this is also going to be on website of Energy Community, and I believe GIE and Marco Gas as well. And we will continue in April, on 11th of April, again back to Monday, and we will have a kind of view from above. So from Clean Air Force, from methane tracker, to see what is recorded from the methane emissions. And with that, I wish you all very, very pleasant afternoon and upcoming weekend. So see you in April. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.